Artists, welcome to this week's video. So today we are going to create a picture of Coco from the movie using the skills we learned in our quick tips video on monochrome painting. So if you're ready, let's go. So here is a sneaky peek at the finished painting of Coco and a list of things you might need if you want to try it at home. So in our quick tips video last week we explored the range of tones you can get from a pencil, which helped us to draw Aladdin's shiny lamp. This week we are experimenting with using colour. Woohoo! But more specifically just one colour, and that's what monochrome means, one colour. But before we make a start on our painting, let's look at our reference picture of Coco, and here I've printed it off in black and white so we don't get distracted by different colours, and I've shaded a band across the bottom that shows our darkest darks and our lightest lights. Now before we start to colour our monochrome picture of Coco, let's create the same gradient effect with our paint. And I'm using watercolour paint today, and I've chosen the colour Burnt Umber, which you can see in a tube here. Yep, I know it's brown, but I like brown. You can choose whichever colour you like though, and whichever one you've got at home. So I'm using a little scrap piece of paper, watercolour paper here, the same as I'm going to be doing my painting on. And I've got a jar of clean water as well. So all I'm going to do is to start off with work from the darkest colour that I can get to the lightest, and I'm going to start with the darkest colour on the left hand side. I'm only adding a tiny bit of water, and that's just to help the paint glide across the paper. So we're going to create a really nice gradient effect going from darkest to lightest as we add more water. Adding more water dilutes the paint and makes it more transparent and lighter in hue. So once we've done this little exercise, we can then use and apply our knowledge and understanding to our painting. And doing this exercise first helps us to get a feel for our paint and see the different ranges of colours that were available from just one colour. And also remember that, especially when you're using watercolour, that the lightest colour you can get is actually the colour of the paper. So I started off with a light outline sketch in pencil on my watercolour paper and began by doing a light wash of a really light colour. So Coco's t-shirt was actually white, although there is a bit of shading on there, so I left that white right till the end. And the darkest area was probably Coco's hair, as well as his trousers underneath where the shadow is, and his guitar. So I like to alternate between the two, and certainly with watercolour it's really important to start off with the areas that you know are going to be the lightest first, and gradually build up using layers of colour which get gradually stronger and stronger and intensify until you reach the end result. So this is a bit different to the pencil exercises we were doing with Aladdin's lamp, where we started with the darkest colour, and that exercise starting with the darkest was really just to encourage us to look at the darkest values and not to leave them out and finish our picture without having put them in. With watercolour it's easy to build up from light to dark and harder to work from dark to light, because you can't, like with pencil, erase or lift colour in the same way that you can with pencil, so it's a lot easier to go from light to dark. Another important thing to remember with watercolour is that you need to make sure that your underneath layers are dry before you add a slightly darker layer on the top. Otherwise you'll just get a bit of a mess, and sometimes you can get some streaky lines that you don't really want on the finished piece. So monochrome painting, or painting with one colour, can teach us a lot about value and how we can use contrast between the light and dark areas to create some powerful effects, rather than just relying on lots of different colours. And we can create a really good range of depth and volume to our painting by using just one colour in different layers with different values of that same colour. Another thing to check is constantly keep looking back at your reference photo and at your little test gradient piece that we did in the beginning to see if you are getting that full range of lights and darks in. And as I said, don't forget that the lightest colour you've got is going to be the light colour of the paper. And I'm using this with the white of Coco's t-shirt and just adding a really light amount of colour, a really watered down wash of colour to some of the areas where there might be a bit of shadow. But it's this contrast that will give you a really nice strong effect. And while certain areas are drying, I then go on to other areas and build those up so that you haven't got a lot of waiting time in between. But do make sure that the area you're working on is dry and that it's not next to another area that's still wet, otherwise your colours can spread. Another thing that you can do, which I didn't do today, but you can add white and black paint, and that creates different tints and shades. So we use the term tint when we're adding white and the term shade when we're adding black. So if you haven't got watercolour paints, or if you simply want to experiment, then you can try adding white or black to your poster paints or your acrylic paints, or whatever other paints that you might have at home. If you want me to do a video on tints and shades, then do drop us a comment in the box below and we can look into that on a separate video. The other thing that's quite important if you're doing something detailed is to make sure you've got quite a small fine paintbrush, and that enables you to get into all the little details around, say, like the face and the mouth. But don't forget, if you haven't got this, then don't worry, you can always make do by adding even some of the same colour in a colour pencil or in a fine liner to get that sharp point. But I found this a really fun exercise, and it's really useful to see what your paints can do before you start thinking about what other colours that you can use. And I hope you've enjoyed watching it too, and perhaps you've learned something new. And at the end, don't forget to compare your reference picture with your picture to see how you've done. For today, Architects, I hope you enjoyed painting Coco in one colour today. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, like, comment and subscribe to my channel, and join me next week where we have a quick tips video on Tuesday and our regular Architects video on Friday, and I will see you then. Bye!